Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for making the time to join this workshop this morning. I really appreciate it and realise it's 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning, but hopefully this sets off your week at World Geothermal Congress really well, and you'll network and collaborate with lots of people in here. Firstly, I want to just do a few thanks before we get started. So thank you to the World Geothermal Congress for supporting this event, providing the venue, and all of the AV and support and networking and marketing they've done for this event. I also want to thank the IEA Geothermal TCP who've supported in running and organising. I know this has been a lengthy process, so we really appreciate it. And also the British Geological Survey for collaborating on the workshop, and also the task group, which I'll introduce a little bit later on. Thank you to our speakers for coming along. I know you are very busy, so really appreciate it and helping frame this workshop. All the people who have volunteered to help the workshop, thank you as well. And thank you all again for attending, and hope you find this morning really useful and insightful. So as you can see, we have a bit of a packed agenda. So we're going to do a welcoming and opening, scene setting. So really try to start to think about those wider system benefits of geothermal energy. We've got speakers. We're going to do a little speaker introduction and speaker series, and we'll have a panel Q&A where you can ask our speakers questions. We'll have a bit of a comfort break in the middle, realising this is quite a long workshop. And then we're going to go into the interactive element of the workshop, which is a theory of change, and it's a practical overview and framework. And I'll also show how we'll use it and why we're using it as part of this task group. And then we'll go into a short plenary and discussion, and then closing remarks and thank you. And then there'll be a lunch just outside, I think. Is that correct? Hopefully that is correct. So thank you. Yeah, a little bit of housekeeping. So there's no planned fire drills. If you hear an alarm, please evacuate through the closest fire exit. A videographer and photographer has been arranged for the day, taking videos of the presentations and static images of the events. So if you don't want to be in any of the photos, please just do flag that to them. Water is available using the water fountain, so hopefully you've all got bottles, but there are some cups as well. Lunch will be provided at noon onwards. And please respect everyone's views and opinions. The discussion today is aiming to be open and collaborative, and everyone's opinions really are valuable. So why are we here today? I wanted to bring this together, this task group on wider system benefits, as part of the IEA Geothermal TCP. And for anyone who isn't aware of what the IEA does, the Geothermal Group is an international framework for member countries to share ideas, to collaborate on policy, research, and technology developments. And within this, we have several task groups and working groups. And this task was really set up to look at the wider system benefits of geothermal, so trying to move beyond what the cost of energy generation is and what the carbon abatement is from geothermal energy production. So I really want people today to share ideas, to learn, to network and collaborate, really build and contribute to your work, but also other people's work, hoping to help get your guys to help us align our aims and objectives and the impacts that we'll get from this task group, and really identify activities to drive change in this space where we can really start to see these wider system benefits in policy decisions and investment decisions. So what are the wider system benefits of geothermal energy? What do I mean? So the challenge statement, as Chris really kindly put to me earlier instead of problem statement, the challenge statement is that compared to some technologies in some countries, such as air source heat pumps, wind and solar, high upfront costs and technical risks of geothermal sometimes makes it a smaller contribution or a much more immature technology within some countries. So why do the wider system benefits matter? So we want to understand how geothermal can support the system as a whole. Many of us are very aware that it provides baseload energy generation. It can reduce the need for energy storage. It will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We can integrate heating, cooling, thermal storage. It gives us energy security. It makes sure each country is decentralised and not dependent on other countries. It reduces the demand from the power grid, for example. If we're using it for direct heat, you don't need as much electricity generation. There's the co-production of critical minerals, the transition of jobs from the oil and gas industry, the small surface footprint in comparison to other technologies. It's stable, it's not weather dependent. And there's also those social values. So for example, with mine water energy, those old mine water communities really benefit from things like mine water geothermal energy. So all of these benefits are benefits we're aware of, but how do we make sure people that are not aware of geothermal energy or don't understand the ins and outs, how can they use these wider system benefits to make decisions and implement geothermal where it will really matter? So that is the impact this group wants to try and make. And you guys today will help us on that journey on how we do that, what outputs, what activities, how do we broaden decision making from cost and CO2 saving for geothermal energy. So I want to run through a couple of examples. I've lightly touched on things like integrating underground thermal energy storage. So we have another workshop this afternoon, the Underground Thermal Energy Storage Symposium, and how we can actually use it for energy storage, whether that is power to then thermal energy storage, or whether that's the heat and cool. It balances that intermittency of other renewables, and we can reduce the overall capacity of renewables that needs to be built out by providing that support. We've got different use cases. So, for example, in agriculture, data centres, and also I mentioned that alleviation of pressure on the electricity grid if we're using it for direct heat use, for example. So what are the challenges in communicating and quantifying these benefits? So we've really got no consistent framework and assessing on comparing those benefits. Often, for example, when projects are live, you may know the number of job creations it's done, you can measure the land footprint. But those decisions don't tend to be made as a project is developing, more quantified after a project has been deployed. So that taxonomy, and also how do we quantify those benefits and the methods that we use to quantify those, it's not a consistent framework. And another example I wanted to focus in on is GeoGrid. This is a UK research project with the University of Leeds. And essentially what they're doing here is looking at how geothermal and long duration energy storage can be worked together to use to balance more intermittent renewables. And what I wanted to focus on here was actually the third column, that system optimization. So they really have one pillar that specifically looks at optimizing heat flexibility, electricity system market, and geothermal storage integration into the grid. So they've really tried to focus in on this. And this project is underway and alpha phase has begun. And if you'd like to discuss it any more, I'm happy to chat in the break. Another event I wanted to flag was that we've recently just done our Mine Water Energy Symposium in Newcastle. And part of this, we had a workshop on opportunities and wider system benefits of mine water energy. And it looked at how we can look at potential growth and new opportunities. So, for example, thermal energy storage in mines, not just heat generation. It had discussions on energy security and grid benefits, so that grid balancing that I'd mentioned. It looked at employment and economic benefits, so job creation. And then the social community impact. So this is something we've definitely seen in Gateshead, Newcastle, is that this used to be an old mining community, and we've really seen there's been a lot of support from the mining community. And then they also looked and discussed other wider benefits, so how it integrates into the energy system, how it can play a role in that energy system. So I've mentioned a few of these already. So there's no shared definition of wider system benefits for geothermal. It's difficulty measuring and quantifying those benefits. Wider benefits not reflected in decision-making always, and there's a lack of comparable evidence and case studies. There's challenges communicating these benefits to geothermal because it is such a complex system and can provide so much. I think sometimes this becomes a barrier to people that are not as familiar with it. And the market barriers still dominate on that perception. So what we'll be doing today, so we're really going to build the foundations of this task group today. We're going to share the perspectives on wider system benefits. If we've missed anything, we've had groups, and a lot of this has been formulated on different meetings we've had and what the benefits we see as a group. So I'm really keen to get you guys' opinion and what other benefits we should be considering or how we prioritise those benefits. We won't be able to focus on everything, so what is most important to make sure geothermal is impactful? And then, develop that common understanding. So we'll shape that direction together using a theory of change, which I'll go into a little bit later. We'll identify the most impactful outputs and activities, and that's how we as a task group will progress forward. We'll prioritise what matters for policy investment and decision and evidence, and try to start to co-create the approach in how we actually make this useful for people that are not working so intrinsically in the geothermal community. And then we'll also look to define what we produce. So we really want to see where can this task group go? What are the most useful outputs to policy, to developers, to academia, to researchers? And we'll start to think about initially how we can start to measure and gather that evidence. So what you'll see after this workshop is we'll hopefully have a workshop summary report. We'll capture these insights and really define the direction of the working group. And also you'll all, if happy to, become part of the mailing list and be able to see where this task group is going. And if anyone is interested in being more intrinsically involved, do let me know and you can be invited along to meetings because it's a very open working group. The shared ambition of today is embedding that wider system benefits into real world energy decision making. And as I said, this workshop will define the tangible outputs that the task group can take on to create that shared ambition. So now we're going to go on to our speaker series. So the idea of this speaker series is to really set the scene, get you thinking beyond the energy generation. What is the wider system that we're trying to take on? So I'm going to introduce our first speaker. So this is Dr. Marriott Broomer. Dr. Marriott Broomer is an international energy executive and strategic leader in the global geothermal sector. She serves as the CEO of the International Geothermal Association and chair of the Kafla Magma Testbed in Iceland. With a background in applied geophysics and international governance, Marriott works at the intersection of energy transition, policy, innovation, and strategic partnership. She is widely recognised for her leadership in advancing geothermal energy globally and her building international collaboration across governments, industry, finance and research institutions. And Marriott's also the co-chair of the World Geothermal Congress, so we really appreciate you taking the time today. And she'll be giving the strategic role of geothermal much more of a bigger picture and before we go into a couple of talks that are a little bit more specific. So I'd like to invite Marriott.